Shabbat Shalom. I just got back from Wisconsin from a few weeks there, and my wife and I did what you do as soon as you go back to Wisconsin if you're from there. So my father met us at the airport with cheese, which is not a joke. It is. He got the cheese I like, and he met us at the airport there. We got to my mom's house. We dropped our kids off, said, "Here's Bubby," and my wife and I left. For a day, we went out to Spring Green, Wisconsin, which, anyone know what Spring Green, Wisconsin is famous for? I'm looking, cheese, okay, all right. I'll make the Wisconsin jokes, okay? All right, No, I'm looking at the architect here. Who's from Spring Green, Wisconsin? Frank Lloyd Wright, that's right. And so Spring Green still very much, by the way, indebted to Frank Lloyd Wright, and the city it's the prairie style, and it kind of grows out of the plains in a bunch of angles and weird shapes. But as we were driving out there, it's about a 45-minute drive from Madison, and when I was growing up, it was about a 45-minute drive through fields, right? Basically just through pastures and cow fields, etc. And the whole way out, I kept turning to my wife and saying, I don't know where all these cities came from, right? Like it is now, today, and it's not that long ago, you were essentially in a town through most of the drive until a little bit by the Wisconsin River, and then you get to Spring Green. And as we were out hiking, and I was thinking about sort of what the growth of this area was, and it's great, and it's wonderful, and thanks, Epic, to all the doctors here who know what that is. Okay, it is, we also went to, by Spring Green, a state park called Tower Hill, where they found lead about 150 years ago or something like that. And they just dug straight into this huge hill and extracted all of the lead and then shipped it off to St. Louis, and they, made things with it and did all that there. And as we were driving through and I was thinking about what that meant and what it looked like, I actually was a little bit sad. Because I remember all of these fields and things that we used to drive through and what the pristine land was. And I always, whenever we would go, would think about what it must have been like for explorers as they were there and looking out at this giant forest and what it was. And I know that people here, this place has been settled for quite some time. But in Wisconsin, we get to still see things grow and change as it goes. And there is something beautiful and wonderful about it. And there's also something a little bit sad about seeing that wilderness disappear. And I thought of that as I read through the Parsha for this morning, because there's a line that if you blink, you'd miss, but it's actually quite profound. When the Torah is telling us how to set up the altar that we're going to have and use to sacrifice on, and that we're going to have in the temple, and it's going to be this. There's a law that gets added right at the end about the stones that will be used to build up that altar. The stones have to be you guys are already there. The stones have to be unhewn stones. Iron cannot touch them. You can't use a chisel or a sword or any instrument or tool to cut the stones that are going to be used for the altar. And the rabbis wonder why, because it seems a little bit odd. Now, one read, the historians' read of this, by the way, is that actually lots of different ancient cultures had this rule that the altar in the temple couldn't be made out of cut stone. It had to be made out of found stone. And we're going to come back to that in a second. But the rabbis wonder, so what's the reason for not using the iron on the altar? Ibn Ezra says it's a practical thing. He says if you were to chisel the stones to make the altar, then you would end up with a whole bunch of stone shavings of dubious holiness. Because on the one hand, they're out of stones that were used to make the altar, but on the other hand, they're sort of just like leftovers. So what do we do with it? And what are we going to do with this? And I think of my next door neighbors growing up were and still are Catholic, and they used to eat the communion wafer like leftovers just as snacks. Like they punch holes and they make the wafers, and they would just eat this stuff. And so it was weird. It was a little bit weird to go over and they would say, "Do you want some of this?" Like, "No, I'm good. I don't need your communion wafer leftovers." So perhaps that's the reason. It's something practical about the way that we would build the altar. The Talmud actually has a more profound way of looking at it. The Mishnah says the reason you can't use iron on the altar is because iron is meant to shorten a life and the altar is meant to prolong it. Right? And what are they thinking of? They're thinking of swords. They're thinking of weapons. They're thinking of what we do with the iron. And we don't want to take something that could be used as an implement of destruction or death and try to make this thing, which will be hopefully an implement of life and life-giving for us. And that's why iron can't touch the altar. And I want to add, I think there's something about, in that vein, what iron means to humanity. Iron is a symbol of man's ingenuity, of our ability to create and our ability to shape and change the world around us. We can do it with wood and with bronze and other things, but iron's really, the best thing we came up with until modern plastics and things, or whatever that is. But the idea that iron is something that we can use to shape the world around us, and that we do not want that to be a part of our religious experience, at least in this moment. So those stones have to look like we found them on the ground. They have to be unhewn stones. They have to keep some kind of natural beauty, some kind of primal nature to them. And for us to go and start hacking away is just the same thing that we do when we clear land and we build a shopping mall or whatever it is. It's good. We need it for our society, but not in our temple. And Shabbat is exactly that same thing in our lives. It's a reminder that yes, 6 days a week, we change the world around us, we control the world around us. Thank God for that. But one day, we just rest. And we don't try to shape things, and we don't try to change things, and we actually don't even want reminders of our abilities to shape and to change things, right? That's why we don't even touch money. You don't even have your phone, whatever it is, right? We don't even want a reminder of our power in that moment. And to say that we have to keep the iron off of the altar is also a way that we get iron. And I go back to the hill in Wisconsin, or this is a little bit random, but go with me for a second. What was the big news in astronomy in the last week and a half? The what? Blue Supermoon, nice, which definitely is your new band title, right? Blue Supermoon. Blue Supermoon, and then what happened on the moon? India landed, right? India landed on the moon, on the South Pole. Why is the South Pole important? I'm going completely off the New York Times on this. I don't know anything about astronomy. Because there's water there, which is amazing, right? There's water on the moon. It's frozen. We can go up there. We can see it. And why, though? Why is it so important that there's water on the moon? I promise, go with me. We'll get back to the Torah in a second. It's important that there's water on the moon because the reason why we all want to go up there is not so that Neil Armstrong's grandkids can go ice skating, right? The reason that we want to go up there is because we want to take the water. We want to extract it because it can be used to create a lunar base or fuel or to go and do other things. And as I was reading this and thinking about it, I thought, what does this say about human nature? That we find out that there's a miracle. There is water on a planet that is not our own, somewhere out there, and the first thought is, let's mine it. We can get it and we can use it to do other things. And that's good, and it's okay. We should take these things, we should use these things. No one is saying no iron ever. No one is saying could completely stop. We're not, I won't name a religion, but that just says absolutely no technology, no growth at all. It's good, it's right, we should do it. God gave us this creativity, and yet there is a time where we shouldn't, and a place where we should stop. And a place where we should let things be natural and wild and free and in fact sacred and holy in those moments. And as we think about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, so much of what we do and what we think about are the ways in which we misuse our iron in our lives, our ability to shape and change the world around us, to affect other people, to hurt other people, to build, to do, but sometimes to destroy. And so we think about the ways in which we have misused our ability to create and to destroy. Thank God that we have it, we wouldn't give it up. But what do we need to atone for? Because the altar is wild and natural and should be. And the altar is the thing that we bring our sins to. We don't touch it with our iron, but we think about the things we've done with our iron as we absolve ourselves. And as we come to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we think about the times in our life where it's good that we've changed, it's good that we've effected change, and we think about the times in our life where we wish that maybe we hadn't, or we've done something that we wish we could undo. And we bring those, as we say that we're sorry, we bring those to this altar, and we remember that there are places that should be left free and wild from our touch in this world and in the year to come. Shabbat Shalom, friends.